What is a green flag you've experienced on a first date that made you want to have a second date? Story 1. Not the first date, but the moment I knew I was going to marry this man was when we went grocery shopping. It was about 9 p.m. We had both just been paid. The young lady in line in front of us had a very young baby and was paying with WIC coupons and a food stamp EBT card. Her total came to about $22 and she was holding $20. She looked dejected and put back the one, and the only thing that was probably her splurge, a candy bar and an energy drink. Other than that, she had baby food, diapers, chicken, rice, bananas, formula, wipes, the bare minimum. I turned around to tell my now husband to hand me my wallet. I didn't have to, he already had his out. Took out a $50 bill, handed it to her, and told her to keep the change. He changed her week, he changed my life. That was the moment I knew he was it for me. Story 2. Was just laid off the week before our second date. Called her to cancel. I was down and unsure about my next move. She asked me what kind of pizza I fancy. 1 hour late, she's at my doorstep with pizzas and beer to cheer me up. Married 12 years. Love you, my badass plumber. Reply 1. When I was on my first date with my girlfriend, my mom called telling me my dad had died. Couldn't do it anymore and just left. Later that night, I found flowers on my doorstep and figured it was my girlfriend. That day was horrible, but the small gesture warmed my heart a little. We've been together for a few years now. Story 3. First date with my now wife with whom I had plans to go to a fancy Italian restaurant. I show up a bit early, dressed as nicely as my wardrobe allows. A couple of drinks before she gets there. But anyway, she arrives and we enjoy dinner, drinks, appetizers, and dessert. When it's time for the check, the waitress comes over and says a person who prefers to remain anonymous picked up all tabs and told me to tell you all to continue to enjoy the night. We were both shocked. I wasn't keeping tabs, but this was an expensive meal we just had. I tipped well, of course, and I thought to myself, the only reason anyone would do that is they saw an obvious first date unfolding and thought we were cute/genuine/happy or something. We both felt pretty special. Been married for 3 years and together for 8. We eventually paid it forward to another young couple a few years later. Reply 1. This happened to me and my high school sweetie at a diner. I remember it was odd that it happened that day because I was looking at a really old couple that you could clearly tell hated each other and thinking that I never wanted to be like that. Then the waitress comes over at the end and tells us that someone paid for our lunch because they were appreciating young love. And we honestly were adorable and tiny babies, sitting on the same side of the booth and reading the newspaper to each other. I will never forget that and have tried to pay such kindness forward in my life. Story 4. We went to a fairly fancy place, and I have the palate of a 5-year-old one. I can typically find something anywhere, but I was going through the menu and there is basically nothing I can make remotely edible for me. But they have mac and cheese. We're in our early 30s and we're at a fancy place. Consequently, there's no way I can order mac and cheese and not look like a toddler. The waiter comes around and I am basically having a panic attack in my head. I let her order first. She orders the mac and cheese while I did the same. We go and see a live jazz show. We're leaving and it snowed while we were in the show. I don't remember how it came up, but I made some joke about doing donuts in the parking lot. And to my extreme surprise, she said something along the lines of, "Hell yeah, I've never done donuts in a parking lot. I put the Forester through its paces, turned the traction control off, and got the side windows coated in snow." She was laughing like a schoolgirl the entire time. We hung out a few more times and parted ways as friends. There was a significant class difference. She was staying in her parents' multi-million-dollar home on the ocean, and my parents will die destitute. I'm glad you were able to bond and have fun even though you eventually went your separate ways. I really love the donuts in the snow. Story 5. Not a first date, but about maybe 2 weeks into seeing each other. He saw a friend of mine for the first time that night and we had fun. However, I began crying in front of him and my friend because someone I used to date messaged me telling me he doesn't need me anymore and that my setting up with someone proves he can easily move on from me and that I'm nothing but the past and I don't mean anything. This guy I barely knew at the time sat me down, gave me some blankets, and told me I'm not going to entertain or host anything until he knows I feel better. He then tried making me some hot cocoa but couldn't figure out the curing. So I laughed/cried as I showed him how to do it. My friend told me it was the nicest thing anyone ever did for me, and he was deeply confused because this is the bare minimum for someone to do. And we're engaged now, 8 years later. Story 6. We stayed at the wine bar much longer than planned, and we were trying to race to a restaurant for food before places closed. So I offered a piggyback ride to run it. Due to her wearing heels, she jumped on, threw her arm forward, and yelled, "Onward!" We didn't make it to the restaurant in time, but did end up at the nearby diner for a few more hours. Holy hell, my guy. How strong are you that giving a piggyback ride is faster than her walking? I hope that you're together to this day because you two are definitely meant to be with each other. Hope one day I can find someone who can offer me a piggyback ride. Story 7. We're coworkers and we started flirting after a while of friendship. I dressed casually for a date, aka a white dress shirt, blue jeans, and my date shoes. She showed up all dressed up and couldn't walk in her heels, which resulted in her falling over and scraping her knee. I helped her up and got my extra pair of shoes I keep in the car and some socks for her. Put them on her and bandaged her knee up from my first aid kit. Dinner was great. We bounced off of each other. When it was over and we split the bill, she was insistent on it. I was gonna pay for it since I asked for the date. I walked her to her car and she kissed me on the cheek. I asked for the second date right then and there. We've been together for a year and a half. Her family loves me, especially cause her mother loves my cooking. My family gushes over her. I really think we'll go somewhere. And if we do, I couldn't ask for a better partner. Story 8. I was late because my bike broke down. And when I got to the club, she was surrounded by a bunch of guys chatting her up. I was oblivious to that, just all stressed and covered in oil and dirt from getting the f***ing beast working again. I walked up to her and said something like, "Hey, wanna get out of here and go eat?" And she just smiled, got up, and left with me. Edit. Okay, so on the second date, we were meeting up at a restaurant. I was checking my bike over before leaving to make sure I wouldn't break it down again, when two buds of mine on the block came up and asked me what was up. We all worked on each other's bikes. I mentioned I had a date, and I didn't want the bike to up again. It was like a mix of Harley and Yamaha parts we cobbled together, and I casually commented the clutch seemed janky but workable, so I was gonna grab my stuff from my apartment and take off. They were like, "Oh yeah, we'll take a look and make sure it's good while you do that." I come back and they've disassembled the whole clutch assembly. I'm freaking out like, what the hell, man? And they're giving me this gormless look of, "Oh, can't have a jinky clutch, so we figured we'd fix it." And the short version is I showed up a half an hour late to the restaurant. She's at the bar and some guy's chatting her up. I sit down next to her and apologize her being late because of my idiot mates. And we have a drink and the guy keeps trying to be part of the conversation. And she's responding. And I get a bit pissed, but I keep my cool over it. We get our table and she casually mentions that the guy wanted her to go with him to another place if I didn't show up soon. And I'm like looking for where he is because I'm pissed and want to do something stupid. And she just laughs and says it's cute I got jealous, but she wasn't going to go with him. She was just giving me the for being late. Again. Anyway, we eventually got married, and it's been like 15 years. It's amazing how sometimes the most chaotic beginnings can lead to the best love stories. With all the mishaps, delays, and a touch of jealousy, your relationship kicked off like a scene from a rom-com. Who knew that these seemingly unfortunate events could pave the way for a long-lasting marriage? Cheers to 15 years of laughter and love, and many more hilarious memories to come. Story 9. When we sat down, he told me that he would pay and not to worry since he asked me out. When we left the cafe and he asked me for a walk and we went for one, he listened closely to me because in the end he asked me if I would be comfortable if he brought me home, since I mentioned being followed and catcalled by guys. And he waited for me to reach out for a hug in the end. And even better was the way he asked for a kiss. We hugged and he was always uncertain about a kiss on the first date. That was the moment I knew he would not mind if I said no, but I said yes. Yeah, was a gorgeous first date. Glad to have had that experience at least once so far. Story 10. It was my first time going into the city by myself. I'd seen a Facebook post online for an event with alternative music, emo punk rock, and thought it would be great to check it out. I knew no one there. The event went late into the night, and I'd only just moved here from living in the country towns all my life. I didn't even know how I was supposed to order a drink. Had to ask the bartender, who thankfully wasn't judgmental and told me about tabs and some common drinks. I'd been wandering around for a bit, looking absolutely lost, when this guy came up to me and said that I looked lonely. He brought me over to his friend group and I ended up hanging out with them for quite a while. Unfortunately, I was also completely unaware of my own alcohol tolerance and ended up feeling very tired. I was falling asleep on this guy until the staff came over and told me I had to leave as they didn't want me passing out there. He came with me, offering to make sure I got onto the train safely, and it turned out we lived within 20 minutes walk of each other. So he came with us. He walked me right up to the door, then walked home in the dark alone, messaging me the next day to make sure I was okay. Unfortunately, I didn't see how sweet he was at the time, but eventually we got together, and he has stayed with me through so much in my life. We have been together for around 2.5 years now. Life sure has a funny way of turning seemingly awkward situations into the beginning of something beautiful. Your city adventure, filled with the challenges of fitting into a new environment, led to a serendipitous encounter with your future partner. It's like your very own unique and heartwarming rom-com. Story 11. She came to my door and my puppy got excited. Without skipping a beat, she scooped up the dog and asked where the three of us were going. That was 19 years ago. Puppy is gone, but we've stuck together through hell and back. Reply 1. So, where did the three of y'all go? Reply 2. Local coffee shop, then a long drive to nowhere in particular. Made out under the stairs in some random field. It was probably ill-advised, but it was amazing. I was almost the third wheel. She was my puppy's mama from that first moment. Story 12. I guess our first date was sneaking off together for a walk at the place we worked together. Shortly after, we ended up dating in secret until we announced our engagement to our boss's displeasure. We were walking around the grounds together, and she kept running off ahead slightly to look at specific groups of flowers and remarking about which ones she liked the most and how beautiful they all were. Then she'd realize she left me behind and would come back and walk with me over to them so she could look at them some more with me. It was adorable, and she's still just as adorable today. I don't think I've ever seen someone so excited about flowers. We've been married for 4 years now. Story 13. Wasn't our first date, but I only had a few dates with someone I was dating rather long distance. I was stationed in Sardinia, and she lived in Liguria. So just to have a date required ferries and long train rides, and sometimes short flights, which were always a hassle. However, we tried to make it work. My ship would go to Toulon, France, or Naples, Italy, and we tried to meet up, even if only for a few hours. On our 4th or 5th date, my ship was going to Livorno, so we agreed to try and meet in Pisa. Seemed like a plan and doable. Right before leaving, I felt terrible but thought maybe it would pass. Unfortunately, it didn't. The train ride was insufferable. I was burning with fever, chills, the whole 9 yards, and all I remember was pulling into Pisa, and there she was on the platform waiting for my train. I stepped off the train and literally just passed out in her arms. I mean, out cold. I woke up in a hotel bed, and she was sitting there holding a cup of tea for me, and I was like, what the hell happened? Apparently, right after I passed out, she grabbed a taxi driver, and together they dragged me across the street to the nearest hotel. She got a room and put me to bed, and then just sat there all night watching me. I have no memory of any of that. I just woke up in a bed with her holding a cup of tea because she saw that I was starting to stir. So she went to get me a cup of tea. I just remember thinking, damn, I need to marry this woman, which I did. And that was the last cup of tea the damn woman ever gave me. Story 14. Asking me out on the second date while on the date showed he was interested, and that pattern of vulnerability persisted into a marriage. His communication is still unparalleled, and I'm still surprised how many details he can remember about me/us. Reply 1. This is how I show I'm interested too. Usually when we're about to say goodbye, I ask what their schedule looks like and if they'd like to meet up again. I only ask this though if I'm 99.9% sure they'll say yes, because I don't want to pressure them into saying yes or forcing them to say no to me in person, which can be intimidating and embarrassing. A good answer though, if you don't want a second date or are unsure, is I'm pretty busy and I need to double check my schedule first. That way they can think about it or decline over text/phone, which is more comfortable. Or ghost. Story 15. 2 green flags from the same man. First, thought he was gonna be my first casual hookup. We were both high as kites when meeting, as you do at a music festival, and the next day, while I dead called him a different name, he had already memorized my name and difficult surname and was making plans to see me next weekend. Second, the first date I had to change/reschedule as my mentally handicapped sister needed babysitting. I told him and he suggested coming over if I was okay. I thought, cool, trial by fire to see how he reacts to my sister. She is a great litmus test to see if people are decent or not. He comes over, was a bit awkward, and then totally just bonded with her. He quickly learned how to speak with her and what she was comfortable with. We are now 8 years together, 5 years married, 3 cute pets, a new house in an awesome country, and trying for a baby. Life is good and he is my everything, but still call him a different name occasionally, just for fun. Please leave your story down below in the comments. I would absolutely love to make a video about them in the future, and also don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, Tony's fam, peace out.